We released our housing plan this week, and I imagine we're going to get to talking about it. But if there's anyone out there who's like, I don't think there is in British Columbia looking at the polling numbers, but if there's anyone out there who's like, the housing situation isn't as bad as people say it is, there's not a housing crisis, whatever, they should look at what happened in the downtown east side over the last couple of days. I'm sure people are seeing the encampments in their communities in different parts of the province, because I see them when I'm traveling around the province. I've seen them all the way down the west coast of the United States. And that is ground zero for the housing crisis. The specific situation of, the connection to the larger housing crisis, just to finish the thought, is, people who earn a decent income, looking for a place to live, are now renting places that used to be rented by people with lower income and bidding up those rents. And then everyone's going down a level, bump, 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 and then people are falling out at the bottom of the housing market. It's primarily people on fixed income, disability assistance, social assistance, and seniors. And so looking at housing as an ecosystem can help address some of what we're seeing in the streets. It's not the full solution. It's also mental health and addiction, but we can talk about that. For the downtown east side specifically, the Hastings corridor, we had a situation of fire and explosions made in Hastings and the tents. We had a fire last weekend where firefighters couldn't get to a fire that was in a rental building because they were blocked by obstructions on the sidewalk, tents, and structures. We almost lost another low-cost rental building. There was a survey by a nonprofit organization of 50 women who had been living in and around the encampment. 100%, 50 women reported being sexually assaulted in the encampment. Police were pulling guns and weapons out of the tents. And so there were two possible choices. One was leave the encampment there, hope we don't have a catastrophic fire where people actually die, people aren't murdered, that another building doesn't burn down because there's a fire in the tent and it goes to one of the buildings. Or what happened yesterday, which is to give people, again, there were many housing offers over the last few months. About 90 people have been moved inside from the encampment. But to say, look, we have emergency shelter, we can get you inside, but you can't stay here because it's not safe. It's not safe for the broader community. And so it was an incredibly difficult situation. It was unfortunately necessary, but it is the exact opposite of what we want to have happen. We want people to have dignified housing, and we're headed in that direction. 110 units a month, opening up to respond to the particular crisis in the downtown east side over the next 3 months. We have a building that just got its occupancy permit yesterday. People will be moving in the days to come. So those folks who took us up on the offer of the emergency shelter, they'll be connected with social workers and they'll be able to assess what kind of housing they can go into. Some of them will go into that new building. And so addressing this problem, it's the best of a terrible bunch of choices, really.
In an interview that I did with Douglas Todd a couple of months ago, he described the situation down on the downtown east side as a wicked problem, in the sense that you have one issue after another layered on top of one another. They're woven together, and you can't pull one out and say, oh, here, let's try this. And there's no proven model that anything works. How can we start to try and create a coordinated strategy that says we have to address multiple issues simultaneously? Do we have the resources and the ability to do that?
There are places around the world that have had downtown east side-like neighborhoods. People in crisis, sort of poly-crisis situation of mental health, addiction, poverty, intergenerational poverty. They have been able to transition those neighborhoods into healthy, low-income communities. I believe very strongly that coordinating the provincial government, the municipal government, the federal government, Indigenous leadership, service providers, and people from the neighborhood, that we can work together and we can address the issues of the downtown east side again, not overnight, but in a way that people will see progress and we can work together to make it a much healthier place. Right now, there is nobody bottom lining what happens in the downtown east side. So service providers and charities are in there trying to do their best. The health authorities in there trying to do their best. The federal government has little funding programs here and there. Nonprofits are trying to do their best. They get some funding from us, some funding from the feds. They do fundraisers. And the lack of coordination results in a lack of meaningful progress. And so we've pulled together 50, it's a lot, stakeholders from all those sectors that I talked about. where we have started that conversation about how we're going to create a plan to move the downtown east side from the state of crisis it's in into a healthy low-income community. It's going to involve things like getting rid of the single-room occupancy buildings, making sure there's actually livable accommodation for people in the downtown east side, coordinating between agencies and governments so that we're all funding in the same direction, not undermining each other's initiatives, not duplicating them. And that coordination will make a significant difference on its own, but using the authorities of the provincial government with the support of the city to really address some of these issues. And we'll take that leadership role. We have to get through this immediate crisis, though, of the encampments to really get into that work.